not an option. He actually has to come here.
Yes, GM will kill you if you don't come on stage. We can actually, there's just one more slide. We can just go to that to help with introductions. We don't have a clicker on stage. But yeah, would you guys maybe just first introduce everyone?
Sure. I'm CCP Fozzie on Team 5.0.
CCP Terminus from Team Size Matters.
CCP FoxFour from Team Size Matters.
CCP Scarpia, Design Director.
CCP Delegate 0 from Pirate Unicorns.
CCP Larrikin from Pirate Unicorns.
And CCP Ytterbium from Team Game of Thrones.
I'm CCP Rise. from Team Pirate Unicorns. There you go.
So yeah, in this format, we are just here to take questions and give you the best answer we can or avoid them very delicately. Where's the mic? All right, so there's a mic on both sides. And yeah, don't be shy.
Or I'll be shy.
If nobody comes up and asks questions, we're just going to assume that Eve is perfect.
Eve is perfect.
Yeah, if you have a question, just go to one of the mics. They're on either side. And
Yes. Always late.
Make a 20-minute video about what you think of it.
This has never happened before.
hey.
There we
Bettik
go.
just joined us as well. Yeah. We have a question.
For being the first one up, we're going to give you whatever you want. Any change to the game. Just kidding.
I'll go. Anyway, hi, so my name's Still Reaper. I've played for like 11 years. But anyway, there's an old Exodus feature that I have a forum post on about comet mining. Any ideas if that could possibly be worked or anything on that?
So I mean, that one is, it almost got revived for Odyssey, actually. So that came actually very close to being something then. Gim, do you have anything you want to say about this?
Depends how much money do you have. But no, more seriously, it depends what we want to do with resource harvesting in the future. And there have been ideas floating around on what we could do with those. And like you could tie this to like minerals, but of course it would be very dangerous with the economy and what's happening in there. So like we are thinking about those. And also like if you want to have like some ideas of what could go in there, you could have a look at the various structure stuff we are planning. Like, we are going to announce that soon anyway. So.
Yeah, so the translation is, there's the idea has definitely like bounced around a lot. There's a lot of really good things about it, and some of the kind of parts of that concept may get put into some of the structure stuff. So go to the presentation on Saturday and the keynote, and there may be some interesting stuff there.
Thanks.
Hi, what metrics do you guys use to identify what ships and modules need to be rebalanced?
I mean,
A lot.
Yeah, there's tons. I actually, well, go ahead.
I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about some of this. Well, kind of. Like, when it comes down to it, the most important thing is talking to players and getting their experiences, because subjective experiences matter a lot. It depends on the ship in a lot of ways. We generally try to measure the usage of ships, understanding that you guys are, for the most part, as a whole, rational actors and will migrate towards the stuff that's good. So we can use you guys as like guinea pigs. And you'll let us know by your swarming what is the best. So we definitely try to keep an eye on all of that, which then depends on the ship, but like jumps, PvP damage, PvE damage, like weapon usage, all that kind of stuff. The more it's used, generally, the more powerful it is, which can be good and bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, the reason your question is, like, slowed me down is, I think, like Fozzie says, the feedback is the best way for us to find out what to look at. Like if you're talking about how we discover what might be out of balance, I think feedback is probably more important than anything else. But then the metrics become really important for trying to figure out what the effective changes were. And when we are wanting to validate something players are saying, then the metrics come in. And yeah, I mean, usage metrics. One thing I think it's cool has been happening lately is we're getting more support to try and make our metrics kind of more granular and well-defined. In the past, we can look at pretty broad swipes of metrics, things like damage for a ship type or jumps for a ship type, but it's hard for us to drill into like multiple kind of constraints on those things. So damage for a ship type in wormholes, or damage for a class compared to another class in high sec when they're in a war deck. Like this kind of more drilled down specific metrics is something we're moving towards a lot. So we're kind of each kind of day, it seems like we're getting more specific ways to tune how we look at metrics, which is pretty cool.
And you're going to see some cool fruits of some of, like, not just on shipbound stuff, but general kind of better stats collection in the keynote.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff. One of CCP Quant, CCP Quant is going to show you some awesome stuff. That gives you a bit of an idea of the kind of new capabilities we're getting for collecting stats and visualizing it and all that stuff.
Awesome, thank you.
Chester.
Hey guys. I just was wondering what the panel's thoughts were of making EVE like a system where either players or CCP themselves makes a system where there's, pardon the word, but like a matchmaking sense where you can have either like dojos or something to make arranged PvP or just PvP in general more accessible, other than going like 30 jumps through null, I mean, Thera was great, but I'm just wondering if there's anything else.
I mean, I'll maybe start, we go like down the line for whoever, but I think, first of all, we're divided. Like, there's a lot of different opinions about where we should kind of land on this, because it kind of cuts to the core of what EVE is, and of course, because EVE is so many different things, people have different perspectives about how this would impact what's going on. I think the thing we all agree about is that we want it to be easier and faster to get to the kind of gameplay you want. So if what you want is to be PvPing, I think probably none of us would argue with the idea that that should be something you can get to, hopefully quicker than you can now. But kind of what form that would take. I know something like I always thought of as like more detailed map information, just so that it's faster to figure out where fights are and try to get there so that I can be part of them. But I mean, there's a million versions of what you could do to try and accelerate the time to fighting. Actually, I think a lot of the UI work that does things like make fitting ships faster fits into that vein as well.
Yep. Have you tried out while it was up, did you try out the duality like prototype test of the dojos?
Sadly, I never got a chance to get on duality. I just kind of wanted to hear like your thoughts of, I realize emergent gameplay, all of this, and that's really cool, but sometimes you just want to get on, I want to, go fly around in my Oracle and get some kills, and I want to log off.
Yep. I mean, there's definitely been investigations in that area, and we want to hear more from the player base what you guys think. We're kind of always thinking about this kind of stuff, and I think our opinions both, they're not monolithic, and also they're evolving. We want to get good feedback on that, and that was one of the big goals of the dojo playtest. For anyone who wasn't familiar, one of our engineers who used to work here built a prototype for essentially that kind of thing, where you can get into a engagement with someone, and then it would like launch you off into essentially a dead space area, and you could fight, and you'd lose real ships and all that. And it was just a prototype. It was definitely not something that we were building as a feature, but we wanted to get some ideas of what people thought about it to see if that was something we should investigate more. So we put it on Duality, and we got some feedback, or we got a lot of posts. Not very many people tried it, which maybe is a sign. So we're definitely kind of continuing to investigate that, but no, I definitely don't think we'd be able to commit to anything.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to know?
Yep. Hi, Jun with LomCorp. I know there's probably a lot of feelings one way or the other about jump fatigue, and that's not what this discussion will be about, but was there a particular reason why the Rorcal was targeted for a decrease in its jump range? And if it was because of its combat capabilities, which seem meager, Is there a way or a discussion that could ensue on a way to add modules that might GIMP that but might increase its jump range?
So it's something that the combat potential of it, I don't think was the major reason for why it had, like, for instance, jump fatigue at all, and the lower range. It probably played a bit of a part. At its core, we do, like, jump fatigue isn't just about combat capability. It's also about, in general, players moving long distances quickly and being able to move stuff with them too, which is why, like, jump freighters have an effect on it, even though it's a more minor one. It's very possible that we could revisit that. We would really like to create kind of more opportunities as well for local industry, more ways that you can deploy structures with smaller ships perhaps, or just other ships. And more kind of cool things to do with the Rorqual besides, like, right now it's mainly a like moving stuff around and maintaining structures. Ship also has the mining bonuses, but compression is not very valuable on it because you can do that in a star-based structure. So giving it better roles is also key. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we could revisit.
Thanks.
Next.
Yeah, sorry, 2 quick questions. Has the panel thought about any ideas about actually, when going through a wormhole or sinos, to sort of have a bit of random mini-game sort of in there? So maybe you've got to steer through various paths when you're actually in the sino, the wormhole. And if you don't get it perfect, maybe you arrive on grid in different times, not all at the same time, or you might end up actually not in your destination system, but next door. To sort of mix things up, make it quite exciting. And so you know, it could either be a different system or maybe just different times arriving on the sino. Just throwing it out.
I mean, certainly the answer is no. We haven't thought of that specific thing. But now maybe we will. I don't know.
Just it'd be quite cool to sort of just mess with that sort of you know, boredom of you click that button and then you know you're going to get there all at the same time loading the grid. It doesn't want to be too complicated. It's not, you know, like a separate game, but just sort of,
I think,
you know,
Definitely the concept of inconsistency and like how long it takes to jump or like actually where you land and stuff was one of the things that came up last fall when we were talking about it.
Or maybe you're sort of still on grid, but if you don't get it quite right, then you're a bit further off from everyone else. And the other quick question was just about size of ships. You know, like the Macarial, it's like the same size as carriers and supers almost. I believe that a lot of that's being because of the mechanics of the POS and getting ships to fit in shields. And if they're, obviously you probably can't talk too much about structures changing, but if we remove some of the structures and the way that items anchor in space, then, because it'd be truly epic to sort of get Titans really the true size that they are compared to other ships rather than the size they are currently.
I mean, I think, like, so some of them, like the size difference between the Chimera and some of the others, I don't think that was a design thing to fit in anywhere as much as just, that's just the way that the art for it was built. Back in the day, Wyverns used to be tiny as well, and those got upped in size. So that's, I don't think this, like, specific Macarial versus, like, a Chimera thing is a design decision. Do you want to talk about any structure stuff?
I'm going to try and speak again. Are you ready to translate? Okay, so regarding the second part with the structures, again, we encourage you to come to the keynote this afternoon at 5 to learn more about what's going to happen there. And also on Saturday from 1 to 2, we are going to have a presentation with structures where I will try to speak to you guys and hopefully you will understand what I'm saying. So yeah, like you will get more answers to that question there.
Okay, thanks very much.
Welcome.
Hi, I have the infinite loop question. At least it has been around Fanfest for many years. Because you throw the ball to every other department and they throw the ball back again, and that is how high resolution textures. And the last thing that was said at Fanfest last year was talk to game design panel.
We're going to say go to the keynote.
So are they going to throw the ball?
Yes.
Again?
Yeah, they're going to say come back to this panel next year, but still go to the keynote.
Because it is an infinite loop.
You might get actual answers this time.
Where do you bug report that?
Even infinite, yeah. Just go to the keynote. Okay. That's what we'll say right now. There's going to be a lot of stuff where that's going to be the answer, but that's the answer to this one. Go to the keynote. Yeah.
Hey guys, Ghislaine of Dyson and PL here. First, I gotta say that Dyson is recruiting, and my question is, where do you envision supers and titans to be? I'm not gonna ask what's gonna happen. Just what would you like them to be?
I mean, we would like them to be awesome. Something we'll be talking about some over the course of Fanfest, but they're kind of fast creeping their way up the priority chain for needing a look. I mean, obviously we've talked about it kind of every time we've ever talked to players for the last 5 years that supers need a look. But yeah, it's kind of moving up the priority list, and we're definitely going to be trying to find a way to make them more awesome in the not as distant future as before.
All right.
And yeah, I'd again recommend coming to other talks and roundtables, and maybe we can, after stuff's done today, I don't know, we still don't have, there's no details. I mean, we're still in a place where we're kind of moving towards focusing more heavily on it, and we're having a lot of conversations about it, but we don't have solutions that we're going to be sharing this weekend at least.
Yep. I do want to clarify one thing. So when we've talked about this before a couple of times at I think previous FanFest and in a Eve Down Under radio show that I did, we mentioned a couple of some of the ideas we were working on or thinking about, things involving non-damaging but still kind of cool, powerful effects, things besides just blapping. And some people interpreted that as turning them into giant command ships. I want to make clear that is definitely not our intention. We think there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential in doing cool things that don't involve just killing things. There's a lot of cool abilities that super carriers and titans have right now that are beyond just their ability to kill things. And I think there's a lot of potential in kind of building more stuff there in the future. But
Thanks.
no kind of direct promises of what that will be yet.
Hey guys, Bob Shifto's Camel Empire here. I just wanted to ask, how you guys plan to address power creep in the coming releases in terms of EVE?
So I'm assuming this is coming up probably more because of the tactical destroyers. The power creep is always a danger to a game like EVE, much more so than it is to a theme park MMO. We need to keep a very close eye on it. There's always a balance, though, to be found between trying to make sure we have the ships are exciting and interesting without obviously just obsoleting things. We'll talk a bit more about this at the ship balance presentation tomorrow afternoon, but in general, we're going to be dealing with it the same way we always have, which is by trying to keep an eye on when things start running out of control. Right now, the first two tactical destroyers, especially this people, are a little bit too good. That is kind of cool in a lot of ways, because we do like the fact that people can be really excited about trying out the new mechanics with the ship being really good. But we are very aware that we need to, especially assault frigates, look at the way they overlap with other classes. So in general, we'd like to, for things like the tactical destroyers, we'd like their coolness to come, or kind of a higher percentage of their coolness to come from the gameplay they provide with that unique stance switching mechanic, and less of it to come from just kind of being stat straight up better. So we want to move in that direction, and we're definitely interested in hearing from you guys what you think the best way to get to that balance with this class is. We're going to show off some preliminary stats for the final two, preliminary bonuses at least, for the final two tactical destroyers tomorrow at that balance presentation, and then we'll show off the art on Saturday. And we want to keep the discussion open for that.
Thank you.
Hi, Archon Theo of Hawks Collective. Skynet, I want to talk about it. You're going to remove it, you're saying, but to effectively fly a carrier, you need like 6 months to 1 year training. that would eliminate a lot of new players from it. And I was just wondering if you could like add a module or something that you'd have to fit to a ship, or ship class, battlecruisers, command ships that could only have Skynet on them, assist from drones.
So, yeah, this is also something I want to talk about a bit tomorrow in the balance presentation, I think. But we noticed, I mean, obviously a lot of this feedback in the discussion thread when we announced the Skynet change, and I think really it's something that is not going to get. I don't think we're going to try and deal with this by kind of trying to preserve Skynet in some qualified way. I think the fundamental problem of having a whole bunch of power at very little risk is something that we're not like gonna find some price tag or you know, contrived mechanic that allows us to still let that exist, because that's just bad. It's just a bad experience for kind of everyone. But the thing that really stood out from the thread is that, like you say, people who are investing and working hard to get to carriers and to super carriers are you know, it feels bad to have more taken away from them. And so I think we, you know, just want to take a look at capitals in general and try to find things we can give them that make them exciting and worth the investment, and not necessarily feel tied to Skynet specifically. And that's where we want to move. It's just looking at big ships, figuring out what we can do to make them feel good to invest in, and you know, not be hooked on bad old mechanics necessarily when we do that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
A while back, excuse me. A while back, you'd released a series of mobile structures that you could pretty much put up anywhere. What's the future, or are there plans to continue expanding the line and options there with mobile structures?
Again, you may want to have a look at the keynote or the presentation on Saturday.
You sound like a broken record.
Yeah.
No,
go ahead.
Mobile deployables are cool. What the future of them is, he'll tell you maybe tomorrow, maybe not. But they worked out really well. We set ourselves goals to like have structures for individuals, not just corporations. We wanted to allow people to go more on longer ops, like explorers, for example, refitting, pros and cons with that. But more we were facilitating decision making, and that you could adjust to the situation you're in, instead of saying, oh, now I have to go home, refit my ship, then come back, and things like that. I think it actually worked out pretty well. If anyone does mission running, then you'll probably like the mobile tractor unit. I personally like it a lot. That's why I made it. And we see a lot of those in space. So I'm fairly happy with those. I think it's more about like what Ytterbium will talk about tomorrow, is more scalability with structures. Like what structures. Is it tomorrow?
No, it's Saturday.
Oh, Saturday?
Yeah.
Okay,
Luckily,
Saturday.
the keynote is today and not tomorrow night,
yeah.
like every time.
Yeah. So it's more about the scalability of finding structures that work for individuals, and then finding structures that work for groups, and then even finding structures that work for supergroups, like super capitals building. And I just basically think if we can find a wanting or need for tools for the players, we should develop those. And I think structures is a small part of developing that toolkit for you.
So a deep space POS might be possible with structures?
I would ask him.
Go to the keynote and to the soft presentation.
Yeah, my question is in regards to the special nature of the social interaction that exists in EVE. Have you any plans of trying to do something that would encourage more social interactions, like say getting players from NPC corps, or actually giving them an encouragement to do so more than where you currently are?
You're talking about new players?
New players, old players, like to improve the current social system that is EVE. Do you have actual plans to sort of improve that through mechanics or design changes or something like that?
I mean, I think we can be pretty happy about having one of the most deep, socially incentivizing kind of games in existence. But yes, I think that's probably one of the most fundamental goals in anything we're trying to make, is to make more social interaction possible, and specifically to the new players, and again, talk on Saturday. But you guys have seen a lot of it already. We're developing a new NP. We have a totally new system that we're in the process of rolling out now, and one of the huge goals for that is to encourage people to be social much earlier in their experience as EVE players. We know that connecting new players to EVE's social structures is like one of the kind of biggest impacts we can possibly have on new players in terms of how much they enjoy the game. And so we're going to be working hard to try and improve the kind of time to social interaction for new players.
Also a very sort of conscious design consideration in pretty much any design we're working on right now. And probably it's been over the last 6 months at least, or more so than before, as in like there are things that maybe before were like would consider nice to have, which now are like almost a necessity, like sharing overview settings and like all kinds of, you know. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And from the other side of it, from the actual people running these corps, getting people in, that's one of the big goals for our corp changes that are ongoing. We want to make it as easy as possible for somebody to run a corp, to encourage that kind of social interaction, to bring people in, old players, new players, everyone. So that's one of the reasons that we, for instance, made the changes to the high-sec safaris, the in-corp AWACS and that stuff. We want to encourage people to get into corps together. That's one of the reasons that next week we are setting the default CSPA charge to 0, encourage people to start talking to each other. And that is a big goal in all the stuff we're doing. So we've got a lot of work going on behind the scenes with corp management and the UI and stuff like that. There's some stuff that we put out on Sissy to test, and it'll be back on Sissy again. That should be coming out in the next couple months. That makes managing corps a lot easier, and the goal is to keep working towards that, where if you have a desire to kind of create these groups, to build a corp, we should be supporting you as much as possible.
I would actually very much like to thank for the change of the blue fire change in high-sec as being one of the main push for that, and I'm really happy to see that change for the new player and that sort of thing. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Hey guys, just wondering, looking back rather than forward, is there anything that you cooked up or designed and thought, yeah, this is just going to work, and when it actually got out into the field, you were like, oh God, what have they done? And
never
everything. And is there always going to be as much of a length of time in a change coming along when you see a mechanic and think, yeah, this is well out of whack? Is it you have to think of it in a much larger scale than just, yeah, this is broken, say, in null-sec mechanics and the null-sec meta where it's hundreds upon hundreds, but in the small gang it's not so broke? Does that delay changes coming through, or?
I mean, first of all, yes, we've obviously shipped stuff that sucks. That's shouldn't be super surprising, but the turnaround time, kind of like how we react and decide to make changes, I think varies a ton based on what kind of thing it is. I know that like for us working in balance a lot, yeah, like you say, the environment that it's being used in, or the number of environments it's being used in, has a huge impact on how hard it is to decide how soon a change is needed. And a lot of the time we can see, I mean, one of the things that I think we've talked about in presentations before is that changes have, like, there's an enormous amount of momentum kind of just in gameplay, like in what people use, and that's partly because of skill point and ISK investment. It's also just because of preference. I mean, I still want to fly a Talos just because I love it, even though now it's kind of bad. And yeah, exactly. And so sometimes it just simply takes time to figure out how on target we are. You know, it might take months before we can see even where the trend is really headed in a way that we're positive about, and definitely before we can be sure that something's done what we want. I don't know about specific examples of.
I mean, for the first part of the question, it's Like definitely stuff gets out that gets used in ways that don't work out well or that don't get the results we want. Thankfully, though, again, we have all you guys to help us catch a lot of that stuff before it goes out. We also have the CSM who are extremely helpful with that. One that kind of popped into my mind is we had some plans for late last year to make some changes to the wormhole generation, the quantum flux generator solve upgrade, and the CSM, Pro God Legend, like pointed out, hey, this is how someone would break it, and thankfully we had that, and I'm sure if it had gone out to the public, you guys would have also, some of you would have realized it and pointed it out to us, but we have that support structure, which is hugely helpful, because that allows us to filter out so many of those problems before they ever become an issue on TQ.
And I can give you an example for the first question of what you mentioned, is that remember on factional warfare when the payouts were out of control and people were just like exploiting the shit out of it and printing money, yeah, that was me. So when you see that going out and you see like prices going all over the place, yes, you tell yourself, oh shit, what have I done? And as those two guys were saying, like now it's much better because we have like all of those feedback loops to help us before stuff goes live. And even after, when it's live, you have like those 6-week schedules are much more flexible for preventing this from happening again. I hope so.
Still, you've got to admit the factional warfare 4X scam was a work of art.
Most of the terrible things you guys do are works of art. Yeah.
Thank you.
Evil, evil works of art.
Hello, Tarak00 here from Celtic Anarchy, and the question I have is in regards to the UI changes you're doing. So it may be a bit early for me to ask it now, but the F11 menu, will we be able to like resize it in the future, maybe move it around a bit, like with the new map you have done, which I find very lovely?
I mean, that's a good question. I would expect that it would go away, get redesigned at least, and yeah, I mean, probably redesigned, and probably when that happens, it will, yes, be much more flexible. I mean, right now it's pretty clunky, and I think
there's also a UI modernization panel where the designer on that is actually going to be on.
Okay.
Frigg is going to be on that one.
Oh, nice. Yeah. When is it? Do you know? Do you have any idea?
I'm not quite sure actually.
What's it called?
It's called UI modernization panel.
Okay, cool. And yeah, CCP Colgate is kind of the guy who's doing the kind of most work on the map, and I'm sure he has ideas, so I shouldn't try to speak for him, but...
It's bright and early on Saturday at 11 in this very room.
Nice to know.
I'm sure Friggy will be fresh for that.
I will poke him though.
Yep. Yeah, it's getting heavily worked on.
My name is Garrett. So I tend to do a little bit of the role playing when I play, and I like to think of myself as a pirate, and there's two main things that pirates do when you think about it. You either blow people up or you steal from them. And obviously, there's lots of ways to blow people up in the game, but the mechanics for stealing from other people is, I think, only kind of starting to be investigated. You have like the siphon links, which I'm not sure if they're still to where you can like see them on the API, which kind of defeats the purpose if people know they're there. But I guess, is there any thought to making those, making those so that way, you could just go around and steal from people and they'd actually have to, again, we're getting back to the whole idea of, actually controlling the space that you own. They'd actually have to have ships there in the system, be like, oh wait, someone's stealing from us, versus, they could see from however far away, oh, someone's stealing from us, and send someone out there. And sort of, that's from like stealing from corporations, and then from the stealing from people, again, I have no idea if this would be balanced or not, but any ideas of ways to like, especially with the new Entosis links now, because I know they're primarily being used for SOV, but I guess, kind of from a, lore design standpoint, what would happen if you activated an Entosis link on another pilot, could you ever like steal money from another pilot, or possibly, again, like perhaps not balanced at all, but, eject someone from their ship so you could, go in and steal it.
It's perfectly balanced to me.
If you Entosis linked a pilot, you'd like steal their body maybe?
Yeah.
And like your consciousness would replace theirs perhaps? Well, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, on not specifically on the subject of theft or stealing other people's bodies, which is what I think you're suggesting, or even
just their ship, like,
or even going into their body. But out-of-body experience kind of thing. There a little bit of thought recently about exploring different avenues for illegal activity in general. Something that I personally would like to look at, and there's, I think we've always wanted to explore the CDS side of being a space pilot, being a capsuleer. So nothing specific, but something that we'd like to look at. No promises.
Always do.
Hello. For the Phoebe changes, at first I was a hater, but now I'm a convert. My only issue, I think, is with the Black Ops battleships. I mean, I've been carrying mine around since Phoebe, and they're just not really practical to use anymore, because if you jump in, you have to wait a half hour or longer to jump out, and then there's a real op posted and you can't participate. Is there any thought about relooking at specifically the Black Ops battleships?
I mean, I actually have Black Ops like on a roadmap for rebalance in the next couple of releases, but I think, as I said, the priority list is shifting a little bit, and depending on how that works out, it's hard to say exactly when we get to it, but it's definitely kind of on the short list. I would like to get to work on Black Ops soon and dig into this and figure out where they should be. But
yeah, Black Ops definitely got hit harder by Phoebe than many other areas, and they're not in a great place. We'd love them to be kind of a lot better than they are now, and a better experience than they are now.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just a matter of kind of figuring out where they fall on the list, and hopefully it's soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Zemlin of Damocles Syndrome, CEO and only active member. All I want for Christmas, or by Christmas, is updated bounty hunting mechanics, payable extended kill rights, and a space pony.
I mean, the bounty mechanics come up a lot. It's not a system that's, I don't think delivering on the bounty hunting fantasy in sci-fi without creating broken mechanics in EVE is easy at all. And I think the system we have now is as good as anyone's really been able to come up with, and it's really cool. It's not exactly the same as what you would imagine maybe bounty hunting in books or whatever being. But if you have some super genius bounty system idea, I would pass it along. Either pass it to CSM or in EVE mail or on forums, and hopefully it gets traction, and then we would notice. But it's a discussion that comes up a lot, and it seems like it kind of always ends up in the same place where we're doing as good as we can with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's iterations on it that the team, when they were changing Retribution, had kind of hoped to make at some point. Things like bounties that only pay out to certain groups or pilots, and then you could crank it up the percentage payout, or even have it pay out more than the value of the ship, but still based on ship. So that wouldn't be exploitable. And I think it would be really great to get some of those implemented at some point. There is a lot going on, though, so I'm not sure when we'd be able to fit them in by Christmas, but we definitely like to improve the bounty system, yeah. And like Steve said, or Rise said, pass your ideas along for sure.
But we can get you a pony.
Yeah, the space pony is probably the easiest part of that. Yeah.
We'll talk Tart.
Hi, SCJX333 from the Metallica Alliance here. I think this is a question a lot of people have been waiting for. Are interceptors with entosis links the plan? Is that what we're going for?
So I'll say, this is going to be probably a little bit frustrating for some of you, but I'll say the same thing I said in the thread, which is that we are still working on exactly what restrictions and fittings and all that kind of stuff will be used for the entosis link, but that we are committed to evasion not being the optimal strategy. And we are very aware that if evasion is very good at all, then it can become the optimal strategy very easily. So we're very much keeping that in mind. But we're still in a collecting feedback, discussing it, rather than announcing stuff stage for that. But yes, we do not envision a system where running around with fast ships and just evading is what we want. That is definitely not the goal.
Okay. Yeah, and it's also partly my fault for not reading this thread.
Okay. Yeah, there's a thread on features and ideas. Go post there. I'm reading it. There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of kind of mad people yelling at each other too, but just ignore them and post good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I'm Etienne Yerkelin from Aileron Robotics, and I have a question which is probably just a yes or no answer, and a second question which might be more interesting. The yes or no answer is I remember hearing something about space weather, and is that going somewhere, and can you tell us something about it or not? And then the second question is, has anybody looked at like the fact that JITA is so large and other markets are so small, and it might be more interesting if markets were more evenly distributed, or it was more attractive to sell things in Amar or JITA or someplace. And finally, for everybody in the audience, if you give me 1,000 ISK, I'll give you 2,000. Just check my wallet.
Guillaume, do you want to?
Space weather.
Yes, public events.
Yeah, we've been looking at ways to make things more unpredictable and changing. And as you said, like space weather is one of those variables on the list. Like, I mean, exactly what we could do. Like, it depends. Like, you'd have like some like of the wormhole anomalies you have outside wormhole space. It's just like change how game and combat like evolves around us. Obviously, we'll have to make them balanced because some of them are pretty extreme. But yeah, that's something we are considering. I mean, again, no promises because like it's not on a deployment pipeline or anything. It's just something we are talking about within ourselves.
Sorry, you're talking to me. The guy who asked the questions wandered off somewhere, so...
Yeah.
I had to stay for the answer then.
Well, I did want to ask a follow-up, but anyway, the market thing. JITA versus everywhere else.
I mean, all the cool people are in Rennes or Amar.
I think JITA is more of it's a social construct, not necessarily a game design construct. You're always going to find people want the convenience of banding together in one place where they know they can get everything. And so I think we're always going to have an issue where you have places that are more populated than others. And we got to the point in EVE at least where it's just generally known that whatever you need to find is in JITA, and so it's a self-perpetuating system there where people just go to JITA because they know they can get things there. I mean, you see that in real life as well. There's obviously cities that are huge, like New York and things like that. Those are hub cities, right, where people know they can get things, or they know that niche things will be there, and they can kind of go and find those places. And so it's kind of an inherent human system that we just kind of have to deal with.
Yep. And I think like there's systems that we put in place with giving people kind of more interesting choices about where to do stuff in mind. Like the industry system has some kind of aspects that are built around giving people more interesting choices there. But yeah, I do expect no matter what we do, people are going to band together. Right. The limiting factor is the fact that you can't get in on a Sunday afternoon.
Exactly. I mean, I think social network effects are extremely difficult to design around and with an intent for an intended effect on our part. The biggest example of this is some of you in here will be old enough to remember ULI, when ULI was the hub. And we, as a game design organization, decided we would try to kill ULI. And what we did was we created JITA. So it's tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, if we killed JITA, everyone would just like move to New Caldari or something, or to somewhere entirely different, or Amar, like there'd be a big hub to replace it.
I mean, some interesting space that we've talked about that I'm definitely not proposing will actually happen or come up at any point, but is making it possible for players to have more influence on, you know, like making it so you can screw around with JITA as a player base in some way that you can maybe shift where it's best to do things and have more impact on that kind of social construct that makes JITA the place to be. That's of course very scary, and so it's not something that we're like have a big plan for, but I think the more kind of control we give people, the more interesting things happen.
Mm-hmm.
We only have time for a handful of more questions. Over here.
I'm Ed Hunter and I'm in Red Hawks, Circle of Two. Are you happy the way people are using the word declaration system in Empire for like random word declaration for trade hub camping and stuff like that when they're war tackling people that they really don't have any quarrel with. I mean, it's really good that you can war tackle an empire, a faction you're at war with in 0-0, and especially by you using the mechanic to harass streamers and YouTubers and people like that by constantly war tackling basically.
So I mean, there's a lot of problems with the war deck system. And I think it would always be very tough to try to have us define what counts as a legitimate grievance between two parties. But right now, war decks, there isn't a lot on the line. Often for either group, both can usually avoid combat pretty easily. And if an attacker is kind of choosing their targets in a certain way, they can usually avoid too much danger that way too. And it's definitely something we'd like to make more engaging, have both sides have more skin in the game, which means if the attacker has some skin in the game and actually has stuff at danger, then they may be more careful about who they war deck. But I'm afraid, although that's something we've been thinking about for a long time, we don't really have anything to announce or anything like that. But yeah, we're not happy with war decks in general. War decks have a ton of potential, but they're not meeting that potential very well right now.
Also, it's just a trolling system in general, the way it's now.
Tell me if I'm wrong also, but we've talked about how it would be nice if there wasn't such a binary kind of amount of risk in war decks. Like if it was more, if war decks are sort of the risk associated with being social or owning things as a group, scaled kind of in a more interesting way based on what kind of things you had and what kind of gameplay you were actually taking part in. Rather than just being like we have a name now and now we can be harassed through war decks. And that's one area that I think is likely would actually get explored, and it depends on what happens with the corp work and with structure work, but it's definitely one angle.
Hi, Soden Ra from Riot. You've never heard of me. I have an idea that I wanted your feedback on that's to do with how the combat mechanic works. Which seems to me to be under game design. At the moment, there's a couple of things that seem to me in combat. Range seems to be, relatively speaking, binary. You're either really close or you're long range. And part of that seems to be that it's fairly cramped. If you land up with large numbers of people, you just land up as an amorphous blob. One thing I thought was you could make it more diverse and interesting by opening up the ranges, by sort of increasing it by say a factor of 10, or whatever works, which would also help solve the overlapping ships problem, particularly with Titans going through gates. Because if you increase the distances by a factor of 10, you get a 1,000-fold increase in the volume. So you can fit much more in there, much more cleanly, which also makes it easier to actually see what's going on. But one of the other things with that is you could potentially, if you change the tracking mechanics just a little bit, you can create a new range, sort of super close range. Because at the moment, if you've got ships moving relative to each other, the closer they get, the worse the tracking gets. However, if you modify the equation slightly to take the size of the ship, the angular size of the ship into account, as the ship gets closer, it gets bigger. And so you don't land up with a situation where you've got two battleships a kilometer apart who can't hit each other because they're moving too fast. The ships are actually so big that you can't miss. So you can actually, you get a U-shaped curve in the damage, so really close it's really high, and it drops off to a minimum, which means that there's an optimum range for any given size ship to be at, rather than just get as close as possible. You actually have to finesse it by, and it's just, is this the kind of idea that you might be interested in looking in, and are there any major technical hurdles to actually implementing it?
I mean, with stuff like that, there's usually some technical hurdles, but we definitely are interested in investigating more ways to kind of shake up the way combat works. Increasing sizes like that, there'd be a lot of effects of it. So I'm not sure if that's something that would be doable in any kind of reasonable time frame, but maybe someday. Changing the tracking formula again, we'd have to be very careful with that, but I wouldn't rule it out. But yeah, we'd love to kind of create or shake up the way people do their fighting. In general, having people rely more on their own piloting rather than on other people's piloting. And providing more opportunities for movement to matter, for range to matter. Sniping kind of got killed by fast probing. There's a lot of stuff that can be done there. And yeah, definitely we're always interested in hearing what players have to suggest for that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks. We've only got time for 2 more. So one over here and then one over here.
Hi, Aston Hodge from Exceed, no Hosbard. I was just wondering if you guys, obviously you've changed up how you've done updating your clones. Is there any scope for changing that with your implants as well? Because living in a wormhole environment, there's the problem of you've got to go out to come back in. And most of the time, you probably set in slave set or, then we open up to a wormhole hole, a frigate only hole. And it's like, well, we don't really want to go out in a slave set. I probably want to take my snake set. So is there any way to maybe make it more liquid on the move, but still losing your implants when you die? Yeah. I think that's maybe a move forward with the what you're doing with the pods right now.
I guess a couple of things. Implants in general, we know we want to take a good look at when we also sort of simultaneously look at the attributes on characters. But that doesn't really, I don't know the scope of that when we do look at them, if that would solve this kind of problem or not. We're still just starting to dig into it. I would also say, however, to check out the keynote. Yeah, check out the keynote.
Okay. Well, thanks for that anyway.
Hey, I'm Ninja Turtle. So at the risk of flogging a dead super, I'm going to ask you another question about supers, I guess. For any which way you come at them for balance, is it the number of super capitals that are in game right now? Do you see that as something that could be sustained with a balance pass or something that's going to have to be changed with a balance pass? Because I think that's one of the things that scares people the most when you talk about super capital balances is that you're going to end up with a bunch of ships that are useless, you can't sell, and you can't dock, so you can't reprocess them. What the hell are you going to do with all of these?
I mean, it seems to me like that would be a pretty huge failure. I think we would want the amount of supers to be fine. I mean,
yep.
I
think the way it'll shake out depends a lot on what ends up being implemented, which is we're still kind of early enough on that that's hard to predict. But one thing I'll say is, I've said this before a couple times, I think, at the last 2 Fanfests. One of the key things that wasn't kind of kept in mind when supers were first introduced was that a balanced ship should be balanced if there's 1 of them in the game, and it should be balanced if there's 10 million of them in the game. And that having that kind of whether the ship is interesting and balanced and has uses doesn't depend on any kind of imagined number, like target number, that's going to be a key part of every design we do with any ship, including supers.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. If you have more questions, just find us or come to the roundtables or whatnot. And yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Thank
Thanks.
you.